We talked about one Black Panther, and you loved it so much that we're back to talk about another one because your geek history lesson on Shuri is now in session. Hello, and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And I'm Jason Black Panther Inman. Welcome to your Mind University, the place of learning and knowledge that we call this podcast Geek History Lesson because we are the podcast that teaches you about one character, team, or construct, and a little bit about a little bit less than an hour. And today, because so many of you loved our Black Panther episode, and the world is loving the Black Panther movie, that we decided to talk about the next character that everybody would suspect that we would talk about on the episode. That, of course, is Ulysses Klaw, right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
That's who we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to go talk about a white guy now. No, like we said in the intro, we're actually talking about Shuri, and I just want to...
Daughter of T'Chaka.
Yes, and Ramonda. I want to call a little bit of shade on our listeners.
Whoa. We just started the podcast.
I know. Everyone is screaming at their iPhone and flicking it off right now.
Ashley, we wouldn't have gotten to 201 episodes of this podcast without our fans, so please tread lightly.
I just want to say that not a single one of y'all requested a Shuri episode, but I have 3 requests for the Dora Milaje. You guys got to do better.
All right, I'm going to give you... all right, I will join you with that. I'll give him a little bit of shade.
Because Shuri, especially in the movie, she was great, and so we're going to... That's why...
You're all going to have to...
We're in charge, so we're talking about Shuri.
You're all going to have to stay after class and...
write a 200-word essay about why Shuri's great.
And also write Wakanda Forever on the blackboard over and over and over again. I bet schools don't have blackboards anymore.
They have dry erase boards now. We're old.
We are old. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're going to talk about Shuri, who is played by, what is the actress's name?
Letitia Wright.
She was excellent in the movie, so we're going to find out whether her character is excellent in the comic books. Are we ready to move into the first section of the podcast?
I think we are. And Jason, what is that?
It is the 10-cent origin.
Sunday.
Hey, we've gone to 201 episodes. Things change, baby. The 10-cent origin is the section of the podcast, the first section of our podcast, where we're going to give you the basic Cliff Notes versions of everything you need to know about Shuri of Black Panther fame in case you go to a Wakanda Forever embassy party.
Oh, that'd be so dope.
And you need to tell some Everett Rosses and some CIA people about Shuri. This is how you're going to do it.
Yes.
Listen up.
Shuri is, of course, a Marvel Comics character. She is a Black Panther and famous for appearing in that title, as well as being the princess of Wakanda. She is the younger half-sister to T'Challa, who you may know from the Black Panther. I don't know if everyone knows that.
Oh, sure.
And her first appearance was in Black Panther #2 from May of 2005, and she was originally created by Reginald Hudlin and John Romita Jr. Her abilities include anamorphism, genius-level intellect, expert martial artist, necromancy, super speed, stone skin, and when she has ingested the heart-shaped herb that gives the Black Panther their powers, she has enhanced agility, durability, endurance, reflexes, senses, speed, stamina, and strength.
Nice.
And like Jason referred to earlier, was famously portrayed by Letitia Wright in the Black Panther movie in 2018.
Yeah.
And so there's your 10-cent origin of your Shuri there.
Our next section of our podcast is the meet cute.
That's so weird when you do that.
You don't like these?
No.
We paid $7,000 for those sound cues.
To you?
That's not me. I think if you think that's an insult to, it's actually Ricky Gervais. We paid Ricky Gervais $7,000 to do those.
That's probably cheap for Ricky Gervais.
Those sound cues. So,
if Ricky Gervais would like to come on Geek History Lesson, I'd like to offer him the opportunity to teach a lesson on his cat, Ollie, whose Twitter account I follow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's move.
Free shout out.
All right, so we're going to move into the meet cute.
Yeah, what's that, Jason?
Where we stole a term from romantic comedies. It's the term of how two characters first met each other. And this is where we talk about where we first met Shuri. Now, Ashley,
Yeah.
where'd you first encounter Shuri? I'm very curious about this because I know you have not read a lot of Black Panther comic books.
I literally knew nothing about Shuri until I saw the Black Panther movie.
So
I saw her pictures at Empire Magazine.
The Black Panther trailers is your meet.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, she's cute. What's up with that?
Nice.
Yeah, like you said, I didn't read a lot. I think like a lot of people, I didn't read a lot of Black Panther until the hype for the movie came up. I read the Ta-Nehisi Coates run a little bit before, but she's not a huge part of that.
No, she's not.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll get into in our History 101. Jason, where did you first meet Shuri? Was it in Wizard Magazine?
No, it's not.
No, because she's a more recent character than that.
She's a very recent character. She's actually
05.
She's almost a retcon, to be honest with you.
She is technically speaking a retcon, yes.
Because I, as you know, am a big fan of everything Kirby. So I have read a lot of Black Panther. Black Panther is one of my favorite characters in the Marvel Universe because
he's a Fantastic Four
he's
character.
a Fantastic Four character.
Plug
and if you know
for
my history.
our Fantastic Four episodes that Jason taught.
To be honest with you, I have read the Reginald Hudlin run with John Romita Jr., and I read it because at the time I was a big fan of John Romita Jr. I'm not a big fan of that run, but the first time I read that run after I read Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run, and that's the run
Which T'Challa's a big part of.
And that's the run where T'Challa becomes the king of Necropolis, the king of the dead, and Shuri is in that run, and that was the first time that I sort of knew who Shuri was, and I'd heard that she had become the new Black Panther, but I didn't read any of her stuff until the Fantastic Four run and the Reginald Hudlin run. I've never read her solo series.
Well, you're not missing much.
So that's where
Spoilers for the lesson.
That's where I've met Shuri.
Cool.
All right, let's move into History 101.
All right, so before we dive right into the History 101, as we are...
The main section of our podcast.
Yes, if you can figure that out.
Yeah, Ricky Gervais, he said it. We heard him.
As we're famous for, I'm going to start with a caveat.
Uh-oh. You love to do that, though.
And this isn't a caveat about the publication history, although we're going to talk a little bit about that. This is a caveat about my opinion on this character. Because...
Okay, this is interesting. In 201 episodes, I don't think you've ever done this.
Right. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, I haven't loved every single character that I've ever taught a lesson on. I don't think you have either. That's just... what you do.
Look,
and you find interesting things in that character. I was very, very excited to teach this lesson. I was very...
You requested it.
I was very excited to read more about Shuri because I didn't know anything about her outside the movie. I have a lot of respect for Reginald Hudlin as a writer. He did a lot of amazing things in Milestone. The treatment of this character in the writing and particularly in the art as a female, I found borderline insulting.
Are you going to point this out when you get to...
I am.
Okay.
She's not treated as very capable. She's not treated as very likable. And it's a lot of TNA shots, which I think is completely unnecessary. I don't think a character, despite what they're wearing, needs to have their nipples showing just because they're female. And that's a lot of what the Shuri solo series
Should we explain
is.
what TNA shots are just in case anybody
I don't know,
doesn't
because there's children's listening.
Yeah.
So if you don't know what TNA is, you're probably too young. And
Breasts and
you
butts.
can Google it.
Breasts and
there
butts.
you go.
Bosoms and butts.
It's and unnecessarily so. Now, sometimes you're going to be popping a squat, and I can get a... Well, you know, if you're squatting, like if a character is squatting down or something, like I get it.
I didn't know where you were going with that.
You know, but there's just a lot here. And Shuri is a character who is treated more as a hot girl in a catsuit than an actual capable character like we see in the movie.
That's the question I was going to ask you.
That's what we're in for in this lesson.
Is she very objectified?
Yes.
Okay.
And she's insulted by her mother, by her brother, and by the Panther God.
By Bast?
Yes.
Oh.
Who at this point is just referred to as the Panther God because actually the Panther God was Sekhmet. Bast is just the cat god.
Yeah.
So in the more modern Black Panther runs, it's simply the Panther God. Bast, it being called Bast.
Bast is an invention of the Christopher Priest run, which happened in 1998, which is way before this.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. So in the more modern stuff, because this is 05, which is more modern than the 90s, it's the god is just the Panther God. It's not technically Bast anymore.
Yeah. Just
to get real actually about it.
Even in the movie, they call him Bast. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't I
even though it's
disagree with that on a number of levels.
Okay,
Anyway.
so now that we know your biases,
That's my bias on Shuri.
okay, so we should keep that in mind.
I think so. And I'm going to try to do my best to illustrate as I talk about these different plot points why I feel this way, because I do think that she's a very worthwhile, fascinating, and potentially integral character. I just don't think the comics have pulled it off the way the movie pulled it off.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
which is what happens with adaptation.
And that's one of the strengths of adaptation is you get to take a gem of a character like this and really make her shine. So, interestingly enough, in the publication history world, Shuri wasn't even the first princess of Wakanda that was ever introduced. So, in the Marvel Mangaverse, which was being published around the same time because Shuri was introduced in 2005, the Mangaverse only existed from 2005 to 2006. It was this movement to bring younger readers in who liked manga and who liked anime and stuff like that.
Spider-Man manga is awesome.
Yes. Readers were introduced to T'Challa's younger sister, T'Chana. Because why not? Same name, right?
Sure. Okay.
She's not as cool as Shuri, though, and
right.
eventually turns her back on Wakanda to become the successor to Doctor Doom. So screw her. She's evil.
But she does have a strong career trajectory, I think.
There you go. To be fair, I didn't read this. I just read about it.
Sure.
It sounds terrible. But if someone has read it, I'd love for you to pop into our Facebook or on Twitter and let us know what you thought.
I'm intrigued by this. I'm intrigued by this Doctor Doom apprentice.
But T'Chana has never appeared anywhere else.
Okay.
She's not been brought over into any other media. It's all Shuri all the time, kind of once she goes away. Shuri is T'Chaka's youngest child and his only daughter. From her youth, she always wanted to be Black Panther and was trained accordingly. In all comic incarnations, Shuri receives the same training as her older half-brother T'Challa. And I think that's really important because that is something that the movie doesn't do. She's in no way being prepared to potentially be a Black Panther.
Sure.
But in the comics, like, she could be because she's of royal blood. The siblings don't have the exact same powers, however, because remember in the 10-cent origin when I mentioned something called stone skin, and your brain was like, what is that? Like the gray skin in Game of Thrones?
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought.
So just to jump ahead a little bit, later on, Shuri gets trained in Dajalia. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay. Dajalia is a transcendent plane that represents all of Wakanda's collective memories. It's where you go before you die. You either go to heaven or hell from there.
Yep.
Shuri, while she was there, trained with a Griot spirit, which is like a Wakandan spirit, that had taken the form of her mother, Ramonda, while she was in limbo waiting to die. And through training there, she was imbued with unique superhuman powers that included transforming her body into a flexible stone skin, which cannot be breached by normal gunfire or direct energy weapons. She also gained anamorphism during this time, which allows her to transform herself and anyone she's in physical contact with into either a single blackbird or a flock of blackbirds.
Why not a Black Panther?
Because she wasn't Black Panther at this time. T'Challa was back to being Black Panther.
That's a little weird.
It is weird, but I did want to point out that even though she is a princess of Wakanda and she has the same training as T'Challa, they do go out of their way to diverge their powers, sometimes through weird ways.
Sure.
But she is different than T'Challa, so just to think of her as like T'Challa light female is not wholly correct. It's not incorrect, but it's not
That's
totally
kind of the similar
correct.
thing that they did with Miles Morales and Peter Parker.
Yeah, and She-Hulk and Hulk.
Yep.
So she wants to be Black Panther so bad, right? That as a teenage girl, she challenges her uncle, Cyan, for the mantle because he was Black Panther at the time.
Yeah, because he took over after T'Chaka's death.
Which you might remember from Jason's Black Panther lesson.
Yep.
However, she's like, I'm going to challenge you, uncle. And he's like, surprise, T'Challa already defeated me and claimed the mantle for himself. So she's like, oh, fine.
Oh, so she missed it like by 5 minutes.
Yeah, by like a week or something like that. So while the movie does state that Shuri is 16 years old, the comics never give her an approximate age except younger than T'Challa.
She seems way older than that.
Right. Although, as I can say, having just read her first solo series and do more in prep for this lesson, she's a lot older. Like, she's like 30. Or like late 20s at the youngest.
Well, we've talked about this before off the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
In my head, T'Challa's like 40.
Well, Chadwick Boseman's 41 at the time of the recording of this podcast.
Comic book Black Panther is like 40.
Yeah. And I always got the impression that he is significantly older than Shuri.
Yes, I did
like
too.
10 or
like,
more
there's
years.
There's a decade. Yeah.
And since they don't share the same mother per the comics continuity, I think that makes sense that there would be a significant age gap.
But to me, I have always seen Black Panther as a contemporary of Reed. And
I agree. Since he was introduced in Fantastic.
And my perfect read...
Also of Storm, who's always been a sort of one of the older X-Men.
Yeah, my perfect read is somewhere late 40s, early 50s. I would park Reed at 51.
So old, Jason. Yeah. So old.
I don't know. I've always seen Reed as like he's the oldest scientist.
Is it because of the hair?
A little bit, but also because he's the first.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's the first hero of the Marvel Universe.
Cool.
It's Reed Richards.
Cool. Well, I'm not here to argue with your Reed Richards scale.
Sure. Well, sorry, we're Black Panther is connected to Fantastic Four.
So Jason's mind is just going to go to Fantastic Four.
Anywhere we can turn that ship, I'm going to do it.
So not that long after she first challenged her uncle, Wakanda comes under attack by, you guessed it, Klaw, who we now all know from the Black Panther movie. He's like evil Andy Serkis white guy.
Ulysses Klaw.
Yes.
Well, but the Klaw in the comic books is quite different.
He is quite different. But this is an important moment for Shuri because... Just back to Klaw for a second. Basically, for the sake of this lesson, Klaw is an evil guy who wants to steal vibranium. That's really all you need to know.
With a sonic weapon gun.
Yes.
For a hand.
That's all you need to know for the sake of this lesson. So this happens, and this is the first time Shuri uses the Ebony Blade. Now, the Ebony Blade is a famous sword in the Marvel Comics universe that was originally ascribed to the Black Knight. If you've never heard of the Black Knight, don't worry. He went away after the Silver Age.
No, he didn't. He's still around.
But his main title did, and he's been like a very minor character ever since then.
I mean, I like the Black Knight a lot. He's kind of a D-list Avenger.
Yes. But it has since become a signature weapon of Shuri, which is cool. I think they probably only picked it for her because it's called the Ebony Blade, but swords are great, so I don't care. Using the Ebony Blade during this battle, Shuri killed the radioactive man. Jason, do you know who the radioactive man is?
You know, this is problematic because... I think I know who the radioactive man is in DC Comics.
Well, this is also a retcon. This is a new radioactive man.
I don't think I know the Marvel Comics radioactive man.
It's okay.
No.
He's really not that interesting. His name is Igor Stanchek, and he's a Russian mutant and mercenary.
I do know him.
Okay,
yes.
Great.
As soon as you said Igor, I do know him.
I had no idea who this guy was.
He's not that interesting.
Spoilers, Shuri kills him. And she's really broken up about killing someone for the first time and feeling like she didn't have adequate skills to defend herself without killing, despite the fact that she'd undergone all this training leading up to this point. So T'Challa, because he's a really good big brother, then promises to train her in more hand-to-hand combat with the promise to equip her with the skills she will need in case she ever has to replace him as the leader of Wakanda. It's a good thing that he had this in mind in case you hadn't figured that out. So for those who are maybe a little more familiar with the Black Panther timeline from your own reading or from our previous lesson, this is around the same time that T'Challa and Storm got married and Aurora Monroe became the first foreign queen of Wakanda and Shuri's sister-in-law.
Yeah, this is, in terms of Marvel Comics timeline, it's post-Civil War, but pre-Avengers versus X-Men.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about Civil War, but we are going to talk about Avengers versus X-Men, but not for quite a while. I just wanted to bring that up because...
Is it pre-Civil War? I can't remember.
Civil War is actually not in my timeline.
Okay. It's
like 2005, 2000. So I don't know if it would have started.
Civil War is like 2007.
Yeah. But just so you know, because Aurora is going to show up a lot.
Great.
So like strap in.
Cool.
So they get married, and then what do? Well, T'Challa and Aurora run away with the Fantastic Four to go do some adventure stuff.
This is post Civil War.
Okay, great. There you go. I don't know. I don't read Fantastic Four.
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to steer the ship into the Fantastic Four. Dwayne McDuffie.
Oh, bless.
Great milestone creator, amazing writer. If you haven't read his runs on Static Shock, Icon, please go do it. He was the writer of Fantastic Four, and post-Civil War, Reed and Sue, because they picked different sides. Reed picked Tony, pro-registration, and Sue picked Cap, anti-registration. Reed and Sue took a leave of absence from the Fantastic Four, and to replace them... Black Panther T'Challa and his bride Aurora joined the Fantastic Four, and fun fact, they made the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four's headquarters, the Wakandan embassy for the United States.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so the all new, all different, all diverse Fantastic Four are off living their best lives. And Eric Killmonger, you remember him. He's the problematic cute guy from the movie. Leads a battalion of American battleships on Wakanda. So this puts Shuri into a leadership position that she's completely not ready for. And so she takes all of her closest advisors, and they decide they're going to sneak onto all these ships in the middle of the night with the goal of incapacitating them and sort of taking them off before any bloody conflict ensues.
Got it.
However,
What?
Shuri's captured and incarcerated on one of Killmonger's ships.
By Killmonger?
No, by a bunch of his thugs.
Okay, cool.
Instead of begging for her life, though, she challenges Killmonger to a fight. So she totally goes trial by combat, Game of Thrones. Like,
Okay.
let's just do this between you and me and no one else has to get hurt.
But from everything you've told me about Shuri so far, that makes sense for her character, that she's so headstrong and she feels she has to prove herself that she would do this.
I actually think it's kind of badass, and I really appreciate it,
Sure.
that she's like willing to take it on herself so
Yeah.
that no one else has to get hurt. Killmonger's like, you're a tiny little girl. I don't want to waste my time on you. So he sends a whole group of his men to do his dirty work for him and kill her. But because she's awesome, Shuri kicks all of their butts, which allows Zuri, you know, that old guy, except he's not old, he's young and hot in the comics, the opportunity to free her from her incarceration. Zuri's the character who's played by Forrest Whitaker
Thank you.
in the movie.
That's why I wanted to make sure you explained that for us.
It's really funny there's a lot of characters who are elder in the movies who are like young and buff in the comics.
Marvel Studios does that. They'll just take the name.
Yes, and sort of the intention of the character and mold it.
Exactly, because Martin Freeman is not exactly Everett Ross.
Oh,
either.
no, and we're going to talk about that because Ross...
Everett Ross is a goof in the comics.
And he's ugly.
Whereas in the movies, Martin Freeman's Everett Ross is more of like kind of like a Felix Leiter from the James Bond.
Very, very classic. That's a good call. That's a great,
well, they're both CIA agents.
That's a great analogy there, Jason. So then Secret Invasion happens. You know that thing. Jason, for the listeners playing along at home, what is Secret Invasion?
There are scrolls everywhere, even in the Avengers.
Wow, thank you, Ricky.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Mr. Gervais. I'll address the rest of my questions to him.
Please do. He's actually here.
Okay, yeah. 2008, written by Brian Michael Bendis, art by Len Franciu. The story involves a subversive, long-term invasion of Earth by the Skrulls, a group of alien shapeshifters.
It's actually a really good event.
It is great.
Yep.
A bunch of people who you thought were dead were secretly Skrulls, so that we could bring them back because we missed Hawkeye. T'Challa and Aurora come back from their escapades with the Fantastic Four just in time for Skrulls to invade Wakanda during Secret Invasion, because it's a big deal that Wakanda was never colonized and never successfully invaded.
And this is the first invasion of Wakanda, I believe.
The first invasion of Wakanda, and so, as you might have guessed, a lot of foes of these characters are trying to invade Wakanda.
Sure.
And usually to steal their vibranium. As part of their efforts to quell the insurgency, Shuri teams up with her uncle Cyan, remember him?
Yes.
To lead the Wakandan army against the invading aliens. Secret Invasion ends, and this leads directly into what is often referred to as Shuri's Black Panther solo series, even though she's treated as pretty incapable as far as being a superhero goes, and she doesn't even get to be Black Panther for the first 4 out of 12 issues. But if you need to hire a suitable Black Panther candidate, you're going to want to check out our sponsor for this week's episode, ZipRecruiter.
That's right. ZipRecruiter is the sponsor of today's episode, and they're asking you, are you hiring? Because posting your position to job sites and waiting for the right people to see it, well, ZipRecruiter learns what you are looking for. They identify people with the right experience, and then it invites them to apply to your job. In fact, 80% of employers who just post the job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. That's right. ZipRecruiter is just like Shuri is Black Panther. They don't screw around. They don't wait around. They're going to make sure that the right candidates are out there, and ZipRecruiter is how you find them for your job. Right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That is right, for free. All they got to do is just go to ZipRecruiter.com/geekhistory. That's ZipRecruiter.com/geekhistory. ZipRecruiter, it is the smartest way to hire, and it's also Shuri approved.
There you go.
Thank you for sponsoring today's episode, ZipRecruiter.
Yes. So the Shuri Black Panther series ironically opens with T'Challa, and he is taking a meeting with Namor, who is a super dick, as you will remember from a number of our episodes.
And if you remember specifically from our Geek History lesson on T'Challa, Namor and T'Challa have a rivalry.
We're going to talk about that.
And they don't like each other.
So Namor is continuing his super dick legacy, and he wants to recruit T'Challa into the Cabal.
Oh, yes.
The Cabal is Dr. Doom's team of supervillains that he formed right after Dark Reign. T'Challa doesn't want to be associated with Norman Osborn, who's also kind of floating around the Cabal at this time.
He's running it.
There you go. So he rejects the offer, even though Namor's like, hey, you really should take this offer. Like, for your physical safety, you should join the Cabal. And T'Challa's like, I got it. So he winds up brutally beaten and put into a coma by several members of the Cabal who don't take too kindly to being rejected.
Specifically Dr. Doom. Yeah.
Specifically Dr. Doom, who literally shoots him in the face
Mm-hmm.
because he wasn't popular in high school. After he crash lands back in Wakanda with 2 dead Dora Milaje, which I think is a horrible loss, the royal family immediately decides that a new Black Panther needs to be appointed and anointed by the Panther god, lest the country be left unprotected. So the members of the ruling council, which is mostly made up of W'Kabi and Shuri, just to cycle back, that's Daniel Kaluuya's character and Forrest Whitaker's character, but young, buff, and with more hair than in the movie.
Because it's comics, kids.
Because it is, and it's way before the movie. Yep. So the members of the ruling council, they want Aurora to be the Black Panther, since she's already familiar with being a superhero.
And she's the queen.
She is the queen. But Aurora turns down the mantle because she herself is not Wakandan. She thinks it's really important that a Wakandan be the Black Panther. So she nominates Shuri instead, which is really great.
Can we talk about that for just a second?
Absolutely.
I actually think, I did not know this, or I forgot this, by the way.
Okay.
I think that's a bold move by Aurora, and I think
I'm honestly shocked that the Marvel editors weren't just like, make it Storm.
Yeah, well, they obviously wanted to make the new Black Panther Shuri.
Yeah.
That was a production reasoning, but Aurora turning that down character-wise, writing-wise, is such an interesting move for her because it does really shine her in a perfect light that she really has taken the lessons of Charles Xavier to heart.
Yes.
And that she understands that she would never want a human to lead the X-Men. Mm-hmm. So why would she, a non-Wakandan, lead Wakanda?
And she's also the first member of the royal family of Wakanda to not be from Wakanda. So like she should understand just from that experience, forget about being immune. It's actually one of Storm's, I think, best moments.
It's really
and it's one of the best moments of this solo series, and it doesn't even involve Shuri being Black Panther. So since Shuri had the same training as T'Challa growing up, she's the most obvious candidate. And Aurora was like the only person who recognizes this. In fact, Ramonda's like, I don't know, I really think it should be Storm. Ramonda's a terrible mother to Shuri.
Yeah.
This is the first, there's this whole scene where they're talking in this council room. This is the first of like 4 scenes where she's like, you're just not good enough.
Let me ask you this. Is there any impression that the reason that they're maybe leaning towards Storm is because she's a very powerful mutant? Storm is a very powerful mutant.
They want it to be Storm because they say that she's already been a superhero.
And she's been a team leader too.
And they do say that she's led the X-Men, so she kind of already understands what some of the demands of this position would be. There's another reality where they did it, and I'm so glad that I don't live in that reality.
I will say that there is a reality where Storm was the Black Panther, but there is also another reality that leading the X-Men is not like leading a country, and you shouldn't equate the things together. That's just, not in reference to anything.
Right. So, to prove herself, Shuri is forced to undergo several physical trials to prove that she's worthy, including climbing a mountain. This is where my feelings about this book started to fall apart.
When she climbs a mountain?
She's climbing a mountain wearing a skin-tight purple suit, and it's all shots basically up her butt of her climbing and climbing and climbing and being, I'm so good, I'm so tough, I've climbed a mountain before.
Are those really what the captions say?
Pretty much.
Okay.
And then she kind of like misses her grip and falls, and she's like, I shouldn't be so sassy, but I've climbed mountains before. Then she comes upon a clearing with a bunch of actual sleeping Black Panthers and has to sneak through them. And she's kind of hunched over, and her massive boobs that are disproportionately large to her body swing so low, and her nipples are so clear as she fights these Black Panthers that of course wake up.
Do you remember who the artist of this series is?
I've literally deleted it from my brain.
Okay.
And I don't know if I necessarily want to speak ill of them and their work. I don't know what the editorial mandates were on this, but to me, the art in this as well is so cheesecakey that I'm like, have you ever actually seen a naked woman? Like, I have a problem with how people draw women sometimes, especially male artists, because, like, you just don't physically work like that. So she sneaks past all these sleeping Black Panthers.
Actually, this is a school. I don't know if we should be talking about naked women right now.
Well, we've done it. She sneaks past all these Black Panthers. They wake up. She hits a couple of them in the face. Her boobs swing around.
You're speaking of the animals, not other Black Panthers.
No, they're actual sleeping Black Panther animals.
Just clarify.
And she gets up to the heart-shaped herb bush and picks one for herself. After that, she consumes the heart-shaped herb and faces the Panther God. Kind of like we saw in the movie, she gets to talk to the Panther God, and the Panther God has to decide whether or not she is worthy of being Black Panther. Shuri tells him that she has all this training. She's been preparing her entire life. She's so excited to do this. She's thrilled. This is her destiny. What does the Panther God say? However...
What does the Panther God say?
The Panther God rejects Shuri based on her arrogance that he says she displays to him, which really, when I was reading it, came across more as like enthusiasm and confidence, and blamed her lifelong jealousy of her brother for the reason why she doesn't deserve to be Black Panther, and that she is not worthy of living up to anyone else who has ever taken up the Black Panther mantle, and he sends her away from the spiritual plane.
The artist of this series, by the way, was Ken Lashley.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you say that, and I'm like, yeah, that's
I don't recognize his name.
I don't either, but I think the scene is horrible.
Okay.
I think to take a mantle that is so traditionally male, give it to a female, have them have to go through physical trials, which she does. She does quite capably. She does speedily. It's like a 3-page montage. And then have them face with a god that, since it's referred to as a god and not goddess, you have to assume is male, or we're projecting as male. And to have her come to them, having done everything she's supposed to, with all this training, and to be excited about it, and then for them to slap her down is, I think, horrible.
Ashley, can I propose a devil's advocate here?
Absolutely.
Now, I don't know where the rest of the series goes. Mm-hmm. You have seen The Matrix.
Yes.
Do you remember the moment in The Matrix where Neo meets the Oracle?
Okay.
Wait. Let me finish this just so the listeners understand what I am referring to as well. Neo meets the Oracle for the very first time, and he's supposed to be the chosen one, right? And the Oracle says, "You're not the chosen one," and she tells him that so that he can actually become the chosen one. It's his kick in the butt. Now, is this Shuri's kick in the butt? Because I know she does actually become Black Panther.
Literally, like in the terms of like, this is the structure of a hero's journey.
Yes.
It is. My problem with it is the fact that the previous scene of this, the entire ruling council of Wakanda didn't think she was good enough. It took an outsider who really doesn't know her to say that maybe it should be her, to which her mother's like, you're really not good enough.
So your objection is because she's constantly
and then after this,
negged.
There's another scene where she like admits to everyone that this happened to her and she doesn't think she can do it. And Ramonda's like, yeah, you're right.
Okay, so
to me, this is 3 like kick in the guts in a row that I just don't think this character deserves. Like she's only existed for like 15 issues at this point. What has she done that is so wrong?
Yeah. So your idea is that, and I totally understand. Your objection is that every other encounter person she finds says no.
Yes.
And it would probably be better served if everybody was like, yes, yes, yes.
And then she stumbled.
And then only the Panther God says no.
Yeah, but to me, like, that's like the ultimate, just like, then why did you create the storyline if everyone's just going to take a dump on her?
So then, let's keep going. Because I know she becomes Black Panther.
She does. So all the while, the villain Morlun has been raised from the dead by a group of weird shamans and then literally walks across Africa towards Wakanda.
Morlun is in this?
With the intention of consuming T'Challa. Now, in case you don't know, if you're playing along at home, Morlun eats/destroys totems, and he can see that T'Challa's weak in it. He wants to eat his Panther totem.
He's a Spider-Man villain.
He's terrible.
He's
and he mostly glows and doesn't say anything.
He's a vampire. He's basically just a vampire, but
a less interesting vampire. Like, he's an energy vampire, which is lame.
He's great in Spider-Verse.
He's terrible in this. He doesn't say anything.
Really?
He just walks across Africa to eat T'Challa.
Then why did they make him Morlun? That's so dumb.
I don't know, because he's an evil glowing white guy. Like, I don't know. Meanwhile, T'Challa's still comatose, so Shuri, by default, becomes the Wakandan head of state. Although she's still just a princess, they don't crown her the queen, which she should. Like, she should circumvent Aurora as royal blood, technically. And Aurora should become queen regent. But they just leave her a princess because they know they're going to bring T'Challa back in about 20 issues. So she goes on a tour of nations, right? Like you do when you become a new head of state. She literally has a meeting with, at the time, President Barack Obama, even though he's never named. And that's the thing in comics. You can use anyone's likeness. It's not technically them unless you say their name, and they just call him the president.
Well, we saw him got inaugurated in the Amazing Spider-Man issue.
It's true, but they just call him Mr. President. They never call him, but it's Barack Obama, which is kind of
lots of comics did that.
It's kind of amazing, and I really actually love this scene a lot. And they're like holding hands, and he's like, "It's so nice to meet you," and like it's really cute.
Sure, just want to say, really like what you're doing in Wakanda.
And then they take like a shaking hand picture. It's lovely.
It's all good.
Also, excuse me, that was very good. While she's in the United States, she meets Agent Everett Ross, just like she meets him in the movie. But this version is like a lot less inherently likable than Martin Freeman. Like he's kind of doughy and has a bad haircut and bad glasses and just gets in her way for a couple pages.
I know I didn't explain this in the T'Challa lesson, but did I ever? Do you know the reason why Christopher Priest, the guy who wrote the Marvel Knights Black Panther series, introduced the character of Everett Ross?
No.
He introduced the character of Everett Ross, and he said in many interviews that he saw Everett Ross as a sort of Chandler Bing / Ferris.
I read that Vulture.
Yeah, Ferris Bueller type. And
he's goofy white guy.
And he used Everett Ross as the lens that we saw all the kind of goofy Wakandan stuff through, because Christopher Priest has completely admitted this. He thought a lot of Black Panther lore was stupid. And so he felt that if he had Everett Ross explain it or say it, it would sort of make it more palatable.
I actually don't think he's wrong.
I kind of agree with him too. But that's the reason why Everett Ross is kind of this goofy idiot.
Yeah, but he really only shows up for a few pages.
Sure.
Shuri spending so much time away from Wakanda brings her criticism. So again, she's getting negged on a national scale, and almost every issue cuts to a couple pages of the same two political pundits who basically just talk smack about her without inviting her or anybody else on their it's like pages and pages of this talk show.
It's like a talking TV head. It's kind of Frank Miller-esque Dark Knight Returns.
But like not as well executed. Okay. And they basically tell the reader how bad the Wakandan economy has become and how it gets worse every issue. They're exhausting and they talk so much. Despite what the Panther God told Shuri about being unworthy, she basically just suits up anyway and becomes the self-appointed Black Panther without really any of the powers.
Yeah, she hasn't taken the heart-shaped herb.
Well, she has. Oh, she hasn't been blessed by the Panther God.
So the powers aren't activated.
So she has no, like, I guess it's like latently in her blood.
Sure.
But so she's just like working on her own training. And it's basically the only thing that she can think of doing to protect her family and her country. So like that's kind of cool.
Good for her.
Good for Shuri. Eventually, the Panther God sees her heroism as a humbling act and an act of self-sacrifice. And so she is eventually, in like the 8th of 12 issues, granted the classic Black Panther powers that she always coveted.
Come on, Bast. What's up with this? What's up with this?
Why are you such a dick? It's because they made you a guy, because Bast is a lady in ancient Egypt and mythology. Things become a little more tricky when T'Challa is resurrected by Aurora, because they basically trick the god of death, only to find himself powerless and incapable of recovering as quickly as he wants to. So basically, they only give Shuri powers to take them away from T'Challa and make him...
I was pretty certain he was just in a coma.
He's in a coma, but he's in limbo.
Oh, God, I got it. My bad.
For a couple issues, I didn't want to talk too much about T'Challa in this lesson, but Death is trying to trick him into going to hell.
I apologize.
And so Aurora shows up for like 2 issues and does this voodoo stuff and like brings it back.
Enough of T'Challa. Back to Shuri.
But so they basically give Shuri powers just in time to take them away from T'Challa while he's trying to learn how to walk so he can like fall and sweat a lot. Following false intel about who was behind the attack on T'Challa at the beginning of the series, Shuri tracks down and fights Namor with robotic armor, this like armor updated Black Panther suit that actually looks a lot like Batwing, but before Batwing was a thing. Shuri is able to hold her own for quite a while and even uses some cool tech called Desert Wind that saps all the water out of Namor's body and renders his powers temporarily gone, which is like really cool. But then he jumps back into the sea and kicks her butt. They wind up making peace and working together with T'Challa to discover that Dr. Doom, that guy, had infected a number of Wakandans with nanites, and that these people who were calling themselves the Dysturi were planning a revolution and a political coup to claim Wakanda for themselves. This leads, like the last 3 issues of her solo series lead directly into Doom War. Jason, what is Doom War?
Doom War is where Doom, Dr. Doom, decides that he wants the vibranium of Wakanda.
Yes.
That he's wanted since very early in the issues of Fantastic Four.
For like 50 years now.
That great series by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And he's come back. And he started a war.
Yeah.
And it's called Doom because he's named Doom.
Yes. 2010, written by Jonathan Maberry.
I like Doom more.
Who took over from Reginald Hudlin writing the Black Panther series, art by Scott Eaton. Dr. Doom becomes the first person to ever overthrow or colonize Wakanda, forcing Shuri and T'Challa, who now has his powers back, so they both have powers, to work together as the only two Wakandans who are not under Doom's control. Fun fact, they're able to avoid infection because of their heightened senses and immune systems, so like that's kind of cool. In order to wrest back control of Wakanda, they team up with Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Wolverine. Thanks, Storm, for the X-Men connection. While they are successful, Doom does make a clean getaway with a huge chunk of vibranium, so I think you can tell what Shuri's going to run around the world doing next. In response, she returns to her globe-trotting ways, but this time she's hunting down Doom and the stolen vibranium. However, Doom can control latent magical properties that are inherent in vibranium and is then able to take control of all the vibranium on the planet, because why not?
Well, because as one knows, if you've read the Fantastic Four, is Dr. Doom has been the runner-up several times to the title of Sorcerer Supreme.
Yes,
he is a magician, and he's a very powerful sorcerer. Mm-hmm. So it's some things that modern writers sometimes forget. It's been something that's been introduced more and more and more. So I totally give this to him because I like that Doom is an evil sorcerer.
I just think it's crazy that they're like, that they were Jonathan Maberry was in the room pitching this, and he's like, and then Doom takes over all the vibranium in the world, and you're like, what?
Without torpedoing your lesson, like what I think T'Challa does at the end of this storyline, I think is even more sillier.
Yeah, but Doom started it. Shuri and T'Challa, of course, defeat him, but in the process, they render all processed vibranium in the world useless. And then this, combined with the recent upheaval in leadership, basically the Wakandan economy falls into ruins and the country kind of implodes. Mm-hmm. This leads directly into a Black Panther storyline called Claws of the Panther, but it's Claws with a K because of that Ulysses guy we've been talking about. In this story, Shuri travels to the Savage Land with the intention of meeting Khazar or Khazar, however you want to say it. I don't Khazar. Care. And extract a natural stock of vibranium from the Savage Land. Surprise, Wakanda isn't actually the only place with vibranium, I guess?
No, there's some in South America. There's some in the Antarctic. Yeah, it's not just Wakanda.
No, but Wakanda has the cosmic vibranium, which is the most powerful.
And Wakanda has the most.
Yes, it does. It has like a mountain of vibranium. This storyline gets retconned away pretty quickly. I think it's ridiculous that it was ever done. Also, I hate the Savage Land, so I can't. I hate the Savage Land. It's stupid.
I love Khazar. If there are Khazar fans out there, please request a Khazar Geek history lesson.
When are we ever going to do it?
It'll be 7 minutes long.
It'll mostly be us playing with that Khazar statue that we inexplicably have.
And I'll be doing
What's his tiger's name? He's in the statue too.
It's
Toothy?
No, it's something with
Baku?
It's something with a B. I don't know.
Babusto.
It'll be the shortest Geek history lesson we've ever do.
What's Ozymandias' cat's name?
Bubastis.
There you go.
But it'll be the best 7 minutes of your life. 7 minutes in heaven. Khazar heaven.
Just do it as animal calls, like as a wild cat.
Yeah, growling. There's lots of growling.
So as the title suggests, while in the Savage Land, Shuri's attacked by Klaw.
I'm going to figure out that name of that cat.
Whose whole deal is to revolve around trying to steal vibranium for himself. Klaw doesn't really hold his own, and Shuri kicks his butt, but then sadly, the vibranium in the Savage Land is rendered inert because a volcano erupts and a sound wave ruins it. Just go with it. The whole storyline didn't matter. Shuri then travels to both Madripoor and New York. Jason, do you know what Madripoor is?
It's just an Asian nation that usually has a lot to do with X-Men stories.
Yeah, it's a fake Marvel island off the coast of Southeast Asia.
It's kind of like fake Japan.
Yeah, very much. She arrives in both locations to hunt down vibranium stockpiles, only to discover that Klaw had employed AIM to excavate the sites by the time that she arrives.
Zabu is Khazar's.
Zabu.
We were wrong. Baku.
Whatever.
Zabu.
That was close. Klaw has also been building a robot named Music, but it's M.U.S.I.C. Marvel, stop it with the acronyms. So he's built Music from vibranium that he's stockpiling with the intention of enslaving the world with it. Shuri then calls in some of her super friends, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Black Widow, and together they are able to take down Klaw and Music. Then that asshole Namor shows up again. He attacks Wakanda during Avengers versus X-Men, which Jason mentioned before. Jason, what is AVX?
AVX.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Gervais, what is AVX?
Yes. AVX is basically where Captain America becomes a big dick and decides to attack Cyclops for no reason, just so we can have a 12-part series.
Because of the Phoenix Force. Yeah, 2012, written and drawn by a whole bunch of people, which is why it's a mess.
Yep, it's not even written by a whole bunch of people, too.
Written and drawn by a whole bunch of people. Because it's part of like 18 titles, which is why it's terrible.
Well, it crossed everything. It crossed every title. It's 12 parts long. I
started working in a comic book store when this was coming out. Yeah. It was such a colossal...
Well, it was also quite delayed as well, if you remember. It was seriously delayed.
I have such bad thoughts about
there
that
are
series.
Good moments.
Sure, as there are in... like I talk smack about the Shuri solo series. There's always good moments, even in a mess.
Like the moment you're going to talk about, it's a good moment in that series.
So as the sovereign leader of Wakanda, Shuri declares war on Atlantis. Good for her. In spite of T'Challa's misgivings, because you mentioned that T'Challa and Namor have a rivalry. They do, but they also are kind of bros. And they have an understanding. I wouldn't quite call it a friendship, but they're two characters that kind of revolve around each other, and they talk to each other a lot as like, you're a king of a weird nation that no one has ever heard of. I respect you, but I'm going to fight you now. Hey, you're a king of a nation that no one's ever heard of. Join my team? No. Well, I'm not going to kill you, but someone else might kill you.
I'm going to compare their relationship to the relationship that American presidents have had with presidents of Russia.
I think that's fair.
If you remember the 90s, Bill Clinton was good pals.
I'm not American.
With Boris Yeltsin, who was the former Russian president. Mm-hmm. They were pretty good, and Russia was a good ally. But George Bush was not a good pal with Vladimir Putin. Mm. And so now we sort of have an antagonist relationship with Russia. I would say that Namor and Black Panther, Wakanda and Atlantis are kind of the same thing. Some periods they're friends. Some periods they want to throw missiles at each other.
That's true. If you're a listener from Russia, let us know.
About what? Wakanda?
No, just let us know. I want to know if we have anyone who listens in Russia.
If Boris Yeltsin is out there, please email.
Come on the podcast. We'll do the Geek History Lesson on Russia.
I'd love to meet him.
Great. So because T'Challa kind of very publicly undermines her, Shuri banishes him from the Golden City and is like, go away. The Wakandans then raise, I wrote Wakanda, but actually Atlantis. They raise Atlantis to the ocean floor. And in revenge, Namor tells Thanos that his son, Thanos' son, is hiding out in Wakanda, and that they should be appropriately attacked for harboring him.
And that comes up actually in Infinity.
Right. But, okay, we'll get to Infinity. Yeah. All right. Jason, what's Infinity?
Infinity is Jonathan Hickman's giant Cosmic Key Avengers event that eventually leads into Secret Wars, where Thanos comes to Earth to cause a ruckus.
Yeah. Yeah, basically.
Yep. But basically he's looking for his son, Thane.
Yeah. So T'Challa eventually gets reinstated as the king of Wakanda and the sovereign monarch because Marvel Comics was told by Marvel Studios that they were developing a movie with this character and they couldn't stand to have this kind of disparation between brands. I don't wholly condone this move in the comics because Shuri often gets relegated to a background character in this continuity unless she's the Black Panther or the Queen. She doesn't get a lot of definition outside of it, but during/by the end of Infinity, Shuri is seen to be the head of the Wakandan School for Alternative Studies, which is kind of cool, and I'm convinced is the single solitary reason for her tech genius persona in the movie. I'm convinced that someone saw that and was like, that's cool, let's make her this now. Because this is comics, Shuri dies during Time Runs Out.
I knew this was going to happen.
Leading up to Secret Wars, like Jason just talked about, when the Cabal attacks Wakanda once again. So she kind of like came in with the Cabal and goes out with the Cabal. She sacrifices herself so that T'Challa can escape attack. Fun fact, Shuri can be seen kind of the next time she pops up when we go to the Spirit Plane and she's resting among her fellow Black Panthers, which I actually really love. I think it's so great that she is celebrated in this way, even though as like the reject Black Panther.
That is part of the ability that when T'Challa wasn't Black Panther and Shuri was in charge,
when he was the king of the dead,
Jonathan Hickman made him the king of the dead, the king of Necropolis, and this allowed him the ability to be able to talk to any Wakandan that died.
Yes.
And so now that he's Black Panther and the King of Wakanda. They've allowed him to keep...
And the King of Wakanda?
Well, they've let him keep both his powers. He can go and talk to Shuri.
Mm-hmm. So while she's dead, some members of the Dora Milaje went rogue and refused to do their duty protecting the King of Wakanda. And 2 Wakandans named Tetu and Zenzi also lead an attempted rebellion against T'Challa in the royal family. So basically, Shuri dies and things went to even more crap. We get her back during all new, all different Marvel Now in 2015. T'Challa goes to collect her body and bring it back. And this was the time when her soul was revealed to have descended to Djalia, like we talked about at the top of the lesson, where she trained with that ghost and got these cool new abilities. Mm-hmm. It was only through partnering with Manifold that T'Challa was able to bend reality, and boom, Shuri returns from the dead. That snap was crap. Sorry, guys.
Manifold,
if you've never heard of Manifold, he's a mutant who can warp reality, and that's pretty much everything you need to know about him.
He can travel through dimensions. He's pretty cool. I like him.
But he's kind of a minor mutant.
Sure.
Because he's a plot device.
But Jonathan Hickman made him an Avenger.
Yeah.
So he's cool. I like him. He's cool.
I'm not a fan of creating a mutant to do something convenient and then making them an Avenger for the sake of your storyline, which happens a lot.
But here's the thing. Manifold's actually been around since the 90s.
Has he?
Yes.
Well, I never heard of him.
Yeah. He's not a recent character.
Oh, I thought he was a Hickman creation.
No, I'm pretty certain he's been around for quite a while.
Well, there you go. I'd never heard of him. This was when Shuri got a collection of new powers that really set her apart from any of the previous Black Panthers, like we discussed. And having returned to life, Shuri set out to round up the aforementioned rogue Dora Milaje and bring them back to T'Challa's side so that they could protect the Golden City from the rebellion that we talked about. She was awesomely successful and reunited all the Dora Milaje the way they were always intended to be, which I think is a great first move, having just been brought back to life. For the integral part that she played in quelling Tetu and Zenzi's rebellion, Shuri was appointed to Wakanda's council and worked under and advised T'Challa. And this kind of brings us all the way up to the most recent, I wrote season, but the most recent set of comics. And so this is where we're going to stop the lesson on Shuri, because we never want to tread too much into contemporary spoiler territories. Shall we roll into recommended reading?
Recommended reading.
So I'm going to recommend a bunch of stuff that
tell what recommended reading is, though.
Well, then, Jason, what's recommended reading? That's your job.
Well, I didn't have Ricky record that. I'm sorry. Recommended reading is our section of the podcast where Ashley, based on the lesson, will suggest 3 books that you should read if you're interested in Shuri Black Panther. You can find all of our choices and recommendations at geekhistorylesson.com/recommendations. Recommended reading, I'm sorry. And we have little widgets there. You can click on it. You can go buy the book on Amazon. And a little piece of that comes back to support the Mind University.
So I recommended the 3 books that Shuri has the biggest role to play in.
Great.
The first one that I picked is Black Panther by Reginald Hudlin, The Complete Collection, Volume 1, because this is where she's first introduced. She's kind of a supporting player here, but if you want to see her origins and you want to see how she interacts with her family and her terrible, terrible mother, this is where you got to pick it up. Then there is Black Panther, Deadliest of the Species. This is the trade that collects all of her time trying to be Black Panther and everybody kicking her in the back.
Is it her entire series?
It is. It's only 12 issues.
Yeah, cool.
And then it leads directly into my third recommendations, which is Black Panther Dumore.
I love Dumore.
I think Dumore is the best story that she is a major part of, and she's still kind of a supporting
That was also in my T'Challa reading.
It is. So,
but it's a good story. I like it.
So you got to double that. That's my favorite one. Cool. So now why don't we roll right into the discussion?
Please, let's have lots of discussions.
So, Jason, I want to ask you.
Yes.
I kind of stated my opinion on the quality of Shuri's solo series up to this point in our history, because there's not one going on right now.
Nope.
What do you think? What should a Shuri comic book series look like? What should it be about? If we're not going to make her Black Panther.
I'm so glad you asked.
Are you?
Because I have been thinking this entire podcast that there needs to be a Shuri Black Panther book. Now, of course, you're going to have T'Challa in the Black Panther book. It's written by what's the gentleman's name?
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Ta-Nehisi Coates. Thank you. The writer for, I know he writes real people stuff.
He writes for The Atlantic, and he wrote a really great book called Between the World and Me.
Yes, he is a writer way better than we'll ever be. So
he got awards.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to give him the due respect that he deserved and is due. So Shuri totally deserves a book. T'Challa needs to be in the Black Panther book. It's like Batman. You're not going to. I
agree.
T'Challa is the Black Panther. Megan the Black Panther. There's a Black Panther book. blah. Shuri, though, with the success of the movie and the amazing performance by the actress in that movie, Letitia Wright, I think that there needs to be a Shuri book. And I think the Shuri book should be one of two things. It should either be where she is sort of running the Wakanda Institute for Gifted Youngsters, like the Wakanda University.
She was working at the Wakandan Institute for Alternative Sciences.
Sure, it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah,
you can make up a brand new school.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, for example.
Sure.
I don't care. Future School.
Okay.
I don't care what it's called. But she's leading that, and it's sort of like her and the younger kids, or it is her traveling around the world, leading a team of Dora Milaje with her super inventions. Give her a Black Panther suit, but a Black Panther suit that's a mix between Black Panther and Iron Man because she's technological, and have her be the secret agent of T'Challa. Have her go out there, give her the role that Lupita Nyong'o had in the movie.
Yeah,
make that
international spy.
Make her the international spy, and I have the perfect title for this book.
What would you call it?
You call her Shuri, the Dark Panther.
Ooh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, because
it's like more covert.
Well, it's more covert, and it's also dark as a synonym for black. And I don't know. There's no other really related cat to Panther, because you
can't call her Black Cat because that's Spider-Man villain.
Well, and you don't want to call her Black Bengal. It doesn't really work.
Yeah,
so like if you just make it Dark Panther, it kind of fits both things. But like I think you want to put Shuri.
Yeah.
So that way, girls, like little girls that see the Black Panther movie will be like, oh, I like Shuri that. But that's what you make it. You make her secret agent Black Panther, Shuri the Dark Panther.
Cool.
That's the title. I think that title needs to exist. That's the whole reason why I made the pitch right now, because I don't care if it goes out in the world, because I want that book to exist.
Totally. Yeah, I would either want to do, like, if it's going to be a comic, I think it should be like Shuri and the Dora Milaje. You could even just call it that for all that I care.
Sure.
I also think...
Come on, Dark Panther's pretty good.
Because it is great. But because they cast her younger and they made a big point of how she's like a teenage genius in the movie, I think this is a great opportunity for Marvel to just do like a YA prose book, like Shuri, Princess of Wakanda.
Ooh, I like that.
And I would love to see it. And
That's a great title as well.
You could even run it sort of parallel to the narrative that they were trying to do, that like she's been raised her whole life looking up to T'Challa, who's significantly older than her, and all she wants to do is be Black Panther, and no one's going to let her.
I like it.
And then she takes this opportunity to like build the Robo Panther suit. Like that's what I would do. Copyright, Geek History Lesson. But I think that since that's something like the YA space is a place that comics are kind of pushing into, I think Marvel has a real opportunity with this character.
You know what also would be an amazing storyline for Shuri? To bring back the Future Foundation of the Fantastic Four. And
I love the Future Foundation.
And you make her a student teacher there.
Yes, yeah, I was like a TA or something like that.
She's a TA. Or you do this.
Oh my God, and Franklin's in love with her.
Yes, or you do this. She's Franklin and Valeria's babysitter.
/ tutor.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
I love that.
And also, she's their babysitter / tutor at the same time that she's Mr. Fantastic's apprentice.
Assistant, yeah.
Yes.
Like maybe she goes, like, if you did it as a miniseries, like she goes there for the summer internship or something like that.
Take her back to where T'Challa first appeared.
Marvel, I know you're listening.
Yep.
Please hire us.
Yeah. So that's Shuri has a lot of potential, and Shuri. It's interesting. Shuri is one of these spin-off characters that you could really spin off, and it won't be derivative, and I think it will add a lot to the Marvel Universe. Like, that title will be a lot of fun.
I definitely
and unique.
agree. And I think the fact that you and I can sit here and be like, or this, or this, or this, or this, like, we're interested.
We came up with 5 different series
so
ideas.
Other people, if we're interested, other people must be interested.
Yeah.
You know. Plus, people love her on Twitter. Get on it.
What else are we talking about?
Get on it. Well, I was going to wrap that up because we, in our fabulous Geek History Lesson Extra Patreon exclusive podcast, we're going to talk about how we would like to see Shuri evolve in the movies and where we want to see her in Marvel Phase 4.
Cool.
So if you want to hear that, you just got to pop on over to patreon.com/Jawiin.
Great.
That's all I got to say. So, teaching tweet?
The teaching tweet is where we are going to sum up the character of Shuri in less than 140 characters, because we're going off our Twitter old school rules. And also, since Twitter has changed, listeners of Geek History Lesson, please let us know at GHL Podcast as our Twitter. Should we get rid of the teaching tweet? I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence there. So I want to hear your opinion. We're gonna keep doing it, but if we get a lot of people being like, I don't care, then we're probably gonna cut it. So I'm just curious what the students would say. But Ashley, and 140 characters less, tell us about Shuri, the Dark Panther.
Shuri, little sister, Black Panther, way better than the comics give her credit for. Hashtag Shuri, because Black Panther has a cute little icon of her.
Yeah, and you can find that tweet at GHL Podcast, or if you don't like those tweets, you won't find those very long. Okay, let's move into the next section of this podcast, the GHL Honor Roll. That's if you go to iTunes and you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Woo! We don't care what you write. You could literally tell us that we suck, but if you give us 5 stars, we're going to read it on the podcast, and we're going to let you into the Teacher's Lounge. So, Ashley, who joins the Honor Roll this week?
I'm assuming this person has a French pronunciation of their name because it's spelled the French way. John Nidiou joins. Nidiou, probably, because there's no U in it. And he says, 5 stars, thanks for the lesson. Found you through Comic Pop, and I just started listening to your show. I gotta say, it's a pretty great one. As I said, I just started going through your episodes, so forgive me if you've done this before. I would love to see a history lesson on Swamp Thing. Well, I'll add you to our list. He says nice things about Alan Moore. Thanks, guys. He says a lot about Alan Moore in the middle. This is not Alan Moore's podcast, so I'm rating it. I'm abridging it to thanks, guys. Thanks, John.
You sure cut off a lot of his message to us.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I didn't read this before I put it in here and before this very moment. There's a lot about Alan Moore in the middle.
Look, John.
And Alan Moore's great, but...
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. You talk about Alan Moore all you want. Thank you so much for that 5-star review. If you guys want the key to the Teacher's Lounge and join the GHL Honor Roll, all you got to do is go over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review over there because it helps us in the search algorithms for iTunes. As a secret also, if you want to take over iTunes, search algorithms are a big deal. Okay, yeah. You can download the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. And also, don't forget to support this podcast and come join the Hall of Justice of all our super friends over at patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. It's all the people over there that help us keep this podcast going, and they're part of this exclusive club that we're creating over there that we're calling the Hall of Justice, and they get podcasts like Geek History Lesson Extra, this new writing podcast I've started called Myth Makers, movie commentaries, all kinds of things. So if Geek History Lesson gives you lots of value, if we have helped improve your life, if we've put a smile on your face, if you've screamed at us in abject terror, please go over to patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin, and consider giving us just $1 a month. That's all we're asking, $1 a month. You know, that's less than 25 cents an episode.
Especially in the month of March it is.
Exactly. So, if we have provided value to your life, please consider giving us value back, and so we can make this show bigger and better and have. To be honest with you, I would love to have a guest on every episode of Geek History Lesson Extra.
Oh man, me too.
But financial means have kind of stopped that. So, in a perfect world, we do Geek History Lesson live.
Ooh.
And we'd stream it on the internet and we'd have guests. But you can go help that at patreon.com/Jawiin. Thank you so much to all our patrons because you are keeping this going strong. Ashley, where can they suggest future lessons on Geek History Lesson like Khazar?
If you really want to recommend
it'd be the best 7 minutes
Khazar lesson.
7 minutes in heaven is what we call that one.
Or any of the other Black Panther characters who might be more interesting. You can do that at facebook.com/Geek History Lesson, geekhistorylesson.com, and on Twitter at GHL Podcast.
You can go follow me on Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin. Follow Ashley on Twitter at Ashley V. Robinson, and follow the podcast at GHL Podcast. Before we close out this episode, I think we should have, one last discussion piece, just to, kind of, because I know a lot of people turn out the podcast as soon as we start going into stuff. So, we're going to have a little last minute discussions.
Okay.
So people, the real people, all the people listening right now, you're the real students.
If you're listening, please tweet us.
Because you stuck around. # stuck around. Let me ask you this. Do you think Shuri should have gotten a different Black Panther costume? Do you like that she basically just has the female version of... Because that's kind of what they do with some of the Spider characters. They just give them the female version of Peter's costume.
That's what they do with, all female derivative characters. I'm looking at you, Captain Marvel.
Supergirl?
well, yeah, I mean, really, I don't mind it. What I would have done is I would have made it purple with black highlights.
Oh, so the main color is purple.
Yeah, to make it stand out.
Really?
I know she's called the Black Panther.
Yeah, that would look weird
but
to
that's
me.
like
It looked kind of like a Catwoman.
That's like my thing. Yeah, I get that, but I'm like, you're right. It's just a black bodysuit with a necklace. Although her necklace is longer and swings between her boobs in a way that physics don't work and outlines her boobs in a way that necklaces don't do.
Look, Ashley, I'm going to bring this up to you right now. I was going to say this earlier, but you have talked about boobs way too much in this podcast, and this is a family-friendly podcast.
You know what? Boobs are important. Everyone ate from them. Get over it. Boobs are family friendly.
And on that note, thank you so much for listening to Geek History Lesson. If you enjoyed this, hashtag stuck around, or boobs are important.
They are.
I am Jason the Dark Panther Inman.
I'm apparently Ashley Boob Robinson.
And Professor Ashley, will you please close down this episode of the Shuri podcast?
Oh, class is thoroughly dismissed.
Class is thoroughly dismissed.
Thank you, Ricky.
You're welcome.